The terror begins in the dark, fog-choked streets of London in 1888. Every shadow seemed alive, and the cobblestones echoed with footsteps that could belong to a monster. Rumors spread of a faceless figure striking terror in Whitechapel, a killer known only as Jack the Ripper. The Ripper wasn't just a murderer, he was a specter of horror, turning the bustling streets of London into his hunting ground. This story is one of fear, brutality, and a mystery that cast a long shadow over history. As you explore the chilling tale of Jack the Ripper, remember that understanding the past can help shed light on the darkness within us. If these stories resonate, consider supporting the journey by staying connected. Every like and subscription helps keep these stories alive, reaching those who seek to understand the mysteries of our world. The streets of Whitechapel. It was the year 1888, a time when the streets of London were cloaked in fog, the lamplight casting eerie glows on cobblestone pathways. The East End was a maze of shadowy alleys, filled with the desperate struggles of people trying to survive in the overcrowded district of Whitechapel. Poverty was thick in the air, and for many, the nights were long and fearful, but never more so than when the legend of Jack the Ripper began to emerge. Whitechapel was a district filled with the downtrodden, where destitution led many women to walk the streets to survive. Among these women was Mary Ann Nichols, known simply as Polly. She was a mother, estranged from her family, and living in and out of lodging houses. On the night of August 31st, 1888, Polly was wandering along Bucks Row, her footsteps echoing through the narrow street. She was looking for enough money to pay for her night's lodging, unaware that her path would cross with that of an enigmatic, shadowy figure, the man who would later be known as Jack the Ripper. The first victim, the people of Whitechapel were used to violence, but nothing could have prepared them for what was about to happen. Polly's body was discovered later that morning, her throat cut with a savagery that stunned even the most hardened police officers. It wasn't just a killing, it was a brutal, almost surgical dissection, the kind that spoke not only of hatred, but of an expertise that sent shivers through the community. Rumors of a monster stalking the streets began to spread, and the newspapers quickly picked up the story, sensationalizing it and christening the killer Jack the Ripper. A reign of terror within weeks, more victims followed. Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, each was found lifeless, their bodies mutilated in ways that seemed both systematic and ritualistic. There was no apparent motive, no robbery, no sexual assault. The killer's only intent seemed to be to instill terror, to dominate and destroy without reason. The brutality was beyond comprehension. It felt almost otherworldly, as if the very streets of London had conspired to give birth to something out of a nightmare. Panic in London. The newspapers fueled the fear, with chilling headlines about the Whitechapel fiend and leather apron. The killer was elusive, leaving behind no clues except for the brutalized bodies of his victims. Letters claiming to be from the murderer began arriving at the Central News Agency, taunting the police and the public alike. The most infamous of these, the Dear Boss letter, was signed Jack the Ripper, and it was this name that would go down in infamy. The letter spoke of the Ripper's joy in killing and promised more to come. Regardless of their authenticity, the effect was immediate. A city on edge became a city in outright panic. The police struggle. The police, under Inspector Frederick Aberline, struggled to keep up. They had few tools at their disposal. Forensic science was still in its infancy. They questioned hundreds of people, rounded up suspects, and walked the dark alleys night after night. But Jack the Ripper was like a ghost. He slipped through the cracks of London's underbelly, hiding in plain sight. He could have been anyone: a butcher, a doctor, a gentleman, or a tramp. The anonymity of the Ripper added to his legend, turning him into a symbol of the unknown horrors lurking within human nature. The fear deepens. The streets of Whitechapel grew even darker as fear took hold. Women walked in groups, and men eyed strangers with suspicion. It wasn't just the threat of death, it was the brutality of the murders that made people feel as if evil itself had taken up residence among them. By the time Mary Jane Kelly, the youngest and perhaps the most tragic of the victims, was found in her small room in Miller's Court, mutilated beyond recognition, the terror had reached its peak. Mary Jane's death was the most gruesome of all, and it seemed to mark the climax of the Ripper's reign of terror. The sudden silence, and then just as suddenly as it began, the killing stopped. The fog of Whitechapel remained, but the specter of Jack the Ripper seemed to vanish into it, leaving behind only questions, fear, and a broken community. Who was he? Why did he kill? Was he dead, imprisoned, or had he simply moved on to other hunting grounds? The mystery only deepened as the years went by, and the lack of answers gave birth to countless theories. Some believed he was a surgeon, others a member of the aristocracy. There were whispers of Masonic conspiracies, cover-upus, and insanity. But the truth, it seemed, was destined to remain hidden. A legend is born. Jack the Ripper became more than just a murderer. He became a legend, a dark myth that symbolized the fears of a changing society. He embodied the unknown, the uncontrollable forces lurking in the shadows of society. His story was one of darkness, not only of the fog-choked alleys of Victorian London, but also of the human heart, capable of inexplicable evil. The image of a man in a dark coat and hat, slipping away into the night, became iconic, a reminder of what humanity could not understand or control. The unsolved mystery to this day, the identity of Jack the Ripper, remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. He is the ultimate ghost of London, a figure who embodies both fear and fascination. The Ripper's legacy endures due to the brutality of his crimes and the questions he left unanswered, questions that continue to draw the curious, the horrified, and the intrigued. In every shadowed alley, every flickering gaslight, there is still a hint of the terror that once gripped Whitechapel, a reminder that, sometimes, the most terrifying monsters are the ones we never catch.